Hi, I'm Ted. You joining us for the Real Ted G podcast. And I have my producer, Bing.
Cheers. What's up, buddy?
Yes, cheers. Natural caffeine.
This is the first time I'm going to have an energy drink since I was 17. Last time I had one, I had heart palpitations. So let's see how this one goes.
I don't have them often. Even Red Bull, that was only a phase that I went through.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah, apparently natural.
85 milligrams of caffeine. That's the only reason I took it. 85 milligrams of caffeine. That's a standard cup of coffee.
So, aspire. So, leaders should inspire. And what is it? All the other people should aspire to be leaders who inspire. So, anyway. Bing, you wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah, so, and it came up in our other podcast. You survived the 2008 financial crisis. So,
I mean, a lot of people survived.
Well, this is an industry that, it was the housing crisis that brought it on. The housing bubble burst, and you're in the housing industry. So,
I may have survived. My hair did not.
Well, how did you? I know we talked about this on another episode, but how did you get through it? And what are some things that you learned, navigating the 2008 financial crisis?
Yeah, wow, 2008 feels 15. Like it was yesterday. It was. So I was in my late 20s. Maybe I had hit 30, but you know how I feel about math. Same way you do. So, all right. So, wow, I remember 2008. I remember a little bit of crisis mode in the office. Where oh my goodness, a whole bank went out of business, declared bankruptcy. What does that mean for the loans that were about to be issued? Oh, you know what that means? They don't get issued. So then another bank would have to step in, pick up maybe the loans. So it definitely felt like a lot of agents were scrambling, definitely to keep their deals together. And again, to keep our clients, from getting on to the next step, buying houses, selling houses. I have a good friend. She was in the middle of upgrading homes, selling her existing home and buying a bigger one. And that derailed those plans, and it actually derailed them for almost 7 years after that.
Wow.
So that's one side of a story of how people's plans could have changed, where a 7-year delay in, doing the upgrade move. I remember not sweating, although not literally, because I used to have this really bad problem. I would like one side of my one underarm sweats more profusely than the other.
What?
Yeah, well, it used to. I don't know. I think between shaving my head, and this is a sidetrack note, but yeah, I used to have a real issue. Like, it wasn't about sweating or overheating. It'd be like one arm was like, what's going on under there? But back to the real term, which was supposed to be a metaphor. I do remember not sweating. I just remember thinking it's important to just do what has to be done. And all right, so, if your bank is out of business, what's the first logical step? Let's see about finding another bank. Okay, so I think that I was really lucky. I had, I have to believe that it was all done because I had a lot of nice training ahead of me prior to those years, because it was 2008, so I had been in the business for about 5 years already.
Okay.
So the deals that I had put together, and it's called, they were all pending transactions. They actually were not affected by the first bank. Only one was, and then we switched banks. So then that it became very clear that only one deal. I was chasing the banks on one deal. Okay. On one deal, one transaction. And I knew that about maybe 5, 6, 7, 2 weeks in, I was like, uh-oh. So out of all my deals, this is the one that could actually land, not land. This is the one where not sticking the landing. And I was like, I said I could have been foolproof. I was like, so then it just became a little bit of a competition in my own brain to say, wait a minute, I want to be able to say that I didn't lose any deals. But 2008, everyone remembers that part. And everyone, and it's definitely worthwhile remembering. It's even It's even worthwhile to say that that's what most movies were based on. You know, the financial crisis, the banks going out of business, too big to fail, et cetera, et cetera.
What happened with mortgages?
Well, that's what was happening. So what the
Like in
way
the
I saw
aftermath.
it from our vantage point, which was the housing market, a lot of mortgages were interest only. A lot of mortgages up through that day, up through 2008, from 2006, 2005, 6, 7, and even in 8, a lot of mortgages were being issued that were. I mean, there's some crazy stories that a dog got a mortgage. They were being issued with 100% financing. Actually, technically, they were being issued with this one term called a piggyback loan, which was a way that you actually trick a bank into thinking that it's getting a 20% down payment, but it has the refinance piggyback 20, 80, 80%, 20% tied to it. I'm not a mortgage professional, so I couldn't even begin to explain how all this worked. But a lot of people were buying houses up through that point with very little money out of pocket or very little investment in it. Skin in the game, in other words. So if you're buying a $400,000 home and you're only using maybe a $5,000 total money outlay, there is a lopsidedness to that can lead to issues. Now, of course, some people may have to purchase homes because they haven't saved enough, and there's an opportunity to purchase a home with very little money out of pocket, but you still have to maintain and obviously be cognizant of the monthly payment that it's going to cost you. So a lot of people didn't. A lot of people felt, well, if I can qualify on this interest only or this adjustable rate mortgage, when the rate adjusts, so now the monthly payment becomes different, higher, then I'll just get a new mortgage with another adjustable rate. Obviously, is not the right way to think of, that's not the right way to be fiscally responsible or financially responsible. But that is the way a lot of people were thinking. So, and a lot of people were using, were using their homes like ATM machines, because they, refinancing your home sometimes involves, you take money out and maybe you can reinvest it in a home, or maybe to upgrade your existing home, or possibly reinvest and buy more property, possibly, make other investments, opportunities, own your own business. So there's a lot of things that a refinance or taking equity out of your home can lead to great opportunities. Of course, I think a lot of the public seem to say, well, this will never end. House prices will continue to go up. I can continue to just refinance, or I can continue to just change loans in order to maintain this lower rate or this convenient monthly payment. And then at the end, there was no more refinancing. The banks are going out of business, so they're not lending money as easily, and they obviously had to, Judgment Day came for them. So now there was no reset. So now a homeowner, if they were going to start to sell their home, would have to either come up with a difference. So if I owe $400,000 on my 100% financed home, and my home is now in the market really only worth $380,000, then I would have to come up with the difference. Cost of doing
20,000.
business. No, not just 20,000, because there is commission and closing costs involved. So now I would have to come up with the difference. And many homeowners are unable to come up with that difference. A lot of homeowners were unable to come up with the difference because that 20 or 40 or 80 or 200,000 was sitting in the driveway in the form of boats and vehicles. And again, most people find to be financially responsible, you don't take equity out of an appreciating asset to purchase depreciating assets. It's it's not the smartest thing you might do.
No.
So that's what was going on. But what people forget is it brought on this phenomenon, in my opinion, because I had never seen these before in the industry, and I think people in the industry would only have seen them 20 years earlier, is something called short sales. And I definitely, from my vantage point, from what was going on around us on Long Island, I felt like I was one of the first people to lower the price of a home to a drastic level. 199 was the number when there was nothing on the market for 199.
Wow.
And at the same time, put together what's called a short sale, which is the sales price does not exceed the amount owed to the bank. And in order to fulfill the transaction, we needed a third party, the bank, the third party, to approve what's called a short sale, approve a loss. So banks, I realized, I found out, and I was coached, and I learned different things. Banks are able to approve what's called short sales, and that way the seller walks away from the transaction, walks away from the house without having to go through a long drawn out foreclosure process that can lead to anything from judgments to to all sorts of other things that can really deteriorate your financial capability. And a short sale, in terms of a short sale, it stays on your credit for somewhere between, I think, 2.5 to 3 years. And after that time period, you can actually become, start to build yourself back and hopefully purchase a home. Whereas a foreclosure usually takes, I believe it's 7 years that it stays on your credit before you can entertain the idea of going ahead and purchasing a home through typical financing through banks. So that was the difference maker, where it helps our sellers, and it helps them kind of like, kind of wipe away that loss. Of course, there's different things, nuances in there, like everything can be issued from a 1099, because the bank can issue you a 1099 that it refers to so-called income, but of course it's still a loss. So actually the sellers, that was the one way we were able to figure out a different option for a lot of our sellers to get out from a pending foreclosure, being behind on their mortgage, having a fear of being evicted from their own home, a foreclosure on their credit report, and helping their family get to the next step. So it was a great way to be able to wipe away bad debt and have them have a fresh start. I know I helped a lot of homeowners with the short sale process. I have a coworker, a colleague. She probably did more short sales than anyone. She was great. And I put together a little bit of a team that involved another colleague, a woman that worked in my office, had a real knack for this, because it is a process. It is a process. It is just like anything else. It's not a touchdown pass. It's we're walking the damn football down. So it was time consuming, and tedious.
Well,
working with the bank.
What did you?
But I had a woman that handled short sales, and she was getting great results with them. So I put together this little team of my short sale negotiator, my short sale expert, myself, good attorneys on either side of us, and buyers that knew that they were getting a great price on a house, a great opportunity, and we fulfilled. I think we actually probably. I definitely believe, almost a 99% closing rate, approval rate.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow. How did real estate change after 2008?
Well, the one thing that happened,
stabilized.
Well, the one thing that happened through this short sale phenomenon, and then of course foreclosures joined the game. So suddenly, what changed in real estate is it became a very well, as horrible as it is to say, healthy, but it became one hell of a buyer's market. It was opportunities for buyers, opportunities for investment, and because of the short sales, it kind of maintained having an opportunity for sellers to be able to say, okay, I didn't lose my shirt. I merely had to take a few buttons off. I didn't, well, I don't think that's the right analogy, but, so at least sellers, it's always nice in the transaction, in anything that's considered sales, it's always nice to have a win-win, So when we can say winner, winner, chicken dinner, it's always a nice thing. And everyone, so how did it change? That's an interesting thought. How did it change? It didn't change the process of real estate. You still have to have a buyer who wants a house and a seller who wants to sell, and you have them have to come to meeting of the minds. How did it change? Oh, I know how it changed. Thank you, Bing. Keep me on track here. Similar to today, the one change that happened, suddenly a real estate agent was worth their weight in gold. Or in my case, platinum.
What do you mean?
Suddenly it became very apparent that you didn't need just anyone, not just anyone could sell your home, especially when it came to short sales. And now whether you're purchasing or selling, the process is tedious, involved, and requires experience, resources, and knowledge. So, so now suddenly it wasn't as easy to sell real estate. And actually, I believe as a result, we probably eliminated a high percentage of licenses. I don't have the official statistic, but I do think that at the peak of 2007 and 8, we may have had across Long Island 44,000 licensed agents.
Wow.
And that number drastically decreased in those years.
Wow. So then it became harder to find an agent, and that means more business was given to the ones that had the license and stayed.
It's not that it became harder to find an agent. It became more important that you find the right agent.
Oh, I see.
So if I had to take my magic wand, whip it out, and say abracadabra, what do I want from this new transitioning market? That's what I want.
Now,
I don't want short sales. I don't. Oh, wait, that came out wrong. I will help with short sales. I don't want the short sale phenomenon to come back. I do not want a repeat of the foreclosure, the craziness of how many foreclosures hit the market.
And that's so sad.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't want houses to be abandoned, but I do want sellers to realize it's not a real estate agent that you need. It's a real trusted advisor.
So what happened to all the people whose houses got foreclosed? Where'd they all go?
Some of my sellers moved out of state. Some, where did they go? That's an interesting thing. See, I'm so lopsided where I deal with sellers, the listings, and Bing, we should have ran these questions by me first. Okay. Where did my sellers? A lot of my the sellers that did short sales, they did come back and purchase homes years later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was always wondered, like,
Yeah.
did they like just come back to the island? Did they leave? Did they go homeless for a while?
Well, some of the short sales were on investment homes or bad investments. So it gave the sellers a chance to wipe their hands clean. But again, I guess the biggest thing, the biggest help, it wasn't about that they erased debt. One of the biggest helps is that within 3 years you're able to get yourself back on your feet and go ahead and pursue the home ownership dream that we all know pays off dividends. So I think that might have been it. If we had not had short sales, we could have been, would have taken that much longer, that much more impact on someone's credit, on someone's life. But that is a great question. No one asked that question. Maybe they should make a movie of that. Where are they now? So 15 years later, a lot of the same people, our parents and grandparents, their children are probably purchasing homes from us as we speak. And that is one of the main reasons, I believe, that's why this time around, when the market escalated to higher, it went way over 2008 peak, 2007 peak. We've exceeded all expectations for home value. And we did it with large down payments. We did it with fiscally responsible transactions. Now, did the banking industry learn their lesson? Maybe. No, the banking industry, I'm sure, learned some lessons. But again, I think we're never going to be saved by one person, but we can be saved by everybody together. So I think as a society, I think the kids that went through the short sale / foreclosure processes and they saw their parents in financial distress, they made smarter choices. Now, of course, some of those children, maybe their down payment came from their parents, and their parents helped them make smarter choices. The same parents that had to go through the distressed property sale, had to go through property values plummeting and around them, having to go through their neighbors, I guess, by some people's assessment, giving away their home. And as we sell houses for less money, the whole neighborhood suffers. So that's why it is important when these transactions have been made the last 3 years, where this market took a crazy turn upwards, and we saw 20% increases year over year, 30% increases. One market town in particular, saw a 38% increase in property values from 2020 to 2021. That's amazing. That's beyond amazing. That's like buying a penny stock and seeing it skyrocket to like $200 a share. So well, anyway, so 2008. That's a really good question, Bing. That one I'm gonna have to remember that if I'm ever asked or talking about it, and that would be a great statistic to see. So where are they now? I think that the 2008 short sale phenomenon, obviously that dragged out through 2009 and 2010. I think it wasn't until about 2011 into 2012 that we saw a much more normalizing market. And that 2008 was the correction, and it happened fast. And it was just, yes. And that's where we felt that little pullback of property values decreased by 10 and 20%.
Now, what's something that you learned from that crisis?
Well, I learned the process of short sales.
Okay.
I learned that we are here to help. I love the fact that I can say I actually had some of my best years in real estate in 2008 and 9.
Oh, wow.
And so on. Because I actually started selling homes, real estate, in 2004. Officially, I was licensed in 2003, but I was licensed late 2003. So in 2004, when I first started, I was late to the party. There was houses were selling very fast, and the person who has listings has the most, usually garners the most sales. But when you're brand new, you don't usually just show up with 20 listings. So it took a while for me to get rolling as well. So I kind of showed up late to the party, didn't really enjoy the open bar, and then it was just time, just when I'm, okay, wait, now I'm a real guest by invite. And suddenly the bottom falls right out.
Oh.
In 2008. I had a lot of colleagues that are no longer in the business. And, I don't know what, and the main thing that kept me in the business was I still had clients that needed help. I had clients that were referring me. I had clients that were, generating me more business. So it's not really nice to just leave. So what did I? But yeah, so I learned the process of short sales. I learned that there's a lot more to a real estate transaction, and I learned that there's a lot of different ways we can help people, and a lot of different challenges. It's no more just finding a buyer and finding the seller. It was finding the right people to keep a transaction together, finding the right scenario, the right resources to help agents, to help sellers and buyers, figure this out. The government helped. I can't say that the government was not helpful. The bailout of the banks, and then we also saw the tax credit that occurred, that also gave a little bit of an injection to the housing market. So I guess what I learned is it's the opportunities are always around us. So I don't know if that answers that question. It does. For me, it answers it.
Cool.
Yeah.
What how long was there like a lack of trust in real estate agents after 2008 that you had to like win back?
Oh. If you were the type of real estate agent that did not go to the trouble to educate yourself and be informed of what's going on, I think that yes, I would not hesitate to believe that sellers and buyers weren't trusting you. But if you were always the type of real estate agent that helped people make good decisions,
no, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about like existing clients or people that knew you. I mean like fresh person has no idea who you are. Did you experience any hesitancy?
No, because I think they all knew that they needed some assistance in this transaction.
Okay.
I didn't. I didn't experience. You get paid too much kind of mentality. Yeah, no, I don't
Was
believe
there
so.
any? Were there any fears?
I think the nice thing about a time of crisis is I always, I'm a positive thinking person, so I always believe there's more people that are there to help than that are there to take advantage.
Okay, good. I mean, listen, that's an interesting way you put it because I have a different viewpoint on crisis. Like I have the opposite, where there's more people to take advantage. But I'm glad there's someone. I guess that's more through cynicism and disappointment. I have that viewpoint. But is there were people from your point of view then when it came to mortgages and having to trust banks, right? Were people more like me, where they were cynical and more weary to take out a loan or get a mortgage as opposed to
Well,
before?
the only interesting thing about 2000, when we stepped into the years of 2009 and 2010, I do remember that 50% of all my transactions were cash transactions.
Really?
So maybe society was a little hesitant to, and again, there were less mortgage programs available. Mortgage guidelines had become very tight. But yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon that, it was 50% of my transactions in those years that were actual cash.
It's actually fun. It's funny you mentioned the strictness of that too, because I am trying to get my my securities license. So for those of you that don't know, that's investments, and now I have to take two additional tests, I believe, to actually get that license, whereas it only took one, maybe two. There's a security industries exam that you have to take, which is the pre-exam to the actual exams.
Oddly enough, they've also increased the licensing exam for real estate agents in those years. I forgot when they changed it, but they took it from 45-hour course. They made it a 77-hour course. Oh, it's not as bad as it sounds.
But still, it's interesting to see how the industry changed. Now, this 75 hours, like where did that extra 20 to 30 hours come from? Like what's involved in that? Like
I was always grandfathered in. I obtained my broker's license actually in 2006.
Oh, wow.
So I actually
Got lucky.
I got lucky that I never had to, because a lot of people you had to make up those hours. So I did not.
2008 was a wild ride. Now, do you think we're approaching something similar?
Everyone asks that question. And I keep telling people that it's impossible to do a repeat of 2008 because of what I mentioned earlier: the higher down payments, the heightened fiscal responsibility, people just making better financial decisions for the most part. I mean, you're always going to have the one wild card, the outlier that happens to be, played fast and loose with mortgages, and suddenly they're in debt and they have bad investments up the wazoo. So most of the information that's around us and most of the experts and the way they're predicting the market conditions, they are actually predicting maybe a 3% increase in property values in the year, in over the course of the next 12 months and 18 months and 24 months, a regular steady, 3 to 5% increase in property values. Okay. And people forget that that's the norm. That should be the norm. So that's why, and I think on top of that, we don't have an influx of inventory. So you're not seeing a lot of people moving. So we actually have a shortage of inventory, which is keeping the house prices stable to still in an appreciating market. So I don't, I hate to say, no, it cannot be a repeat. I do, but I think all signs point to no. I think that we have way too much going in our favor. I think the biggest obstacle that I see in the market today, and just in general, is inflation. I think inflation is impacting people's lives. I don't know if it's going to impact it to the point that we're going to endure some sort of recession. Now, the housing market and the industry, real estate has always been a recession-proof business because people always have to sell. Excuse me. That Aspire is catching up to me now. So I obviously am not a fortune teller, but I don't believe that a repeat can happen.
Okay.
I do believe that children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. No. And actually, so oddly enough, I actually made that point, and it actually works with my point that I'm making. It's the children that are driving the market. The children of my other market, where I help people not get displaced abruptly. Short sale. So now you're moving out of your home on your time frame. You know, enduring a market that your house price might have been 400,000 2 years earlier, and now I'm sitting down and saying your house really will sell for 250,000 today. You know, enduring giving people that kind of news. Is it bad news? Unfortunately, it's not good or bad news. It's actually the news. It is what it is. If someone says, Ted, what do you think my house would sell for today? And I say $100,000 less than last year, I didn't give them bad news. I just gave them the news. But it's the kids that are the driving force. I think millennials are definitely accounting for a lot of our sales, and they're the ones purchasing, and
Really?
they're purchasing with ground rules. They're purchasing with just a real financial responsibility about
And it's
them.
so funny because I remember like 10 years ago, millennials were saying, we're never going to be able to afford a house. We're going to be living at home forever. And then in their 30s, they're buying houses like their parents did.
Correct. And actually, I think that people even in their 20s are buying homes like their parents did in their 30s or 40s. So remember that they're in a better financial position. Incomes went up, of course. So did rents. So actually, that's the other push that we're getting. Where a millennial, why would you pay $4,000 in rent if you can pay $4,200 in a mortgage?
Yeah, and then it's an appreciating asset, and you could rent it out if you wanted to.
But the answer to, is it going to be a repeat? There's only one similarity that I'm noticing already, and I hope it's the only one that I ever have to notice. It's that sellers are aware that they do need a knowledgeable and informed professional around them, whether it's their attorney, of course, or whether it's their real estate agent who's advising them accordingly, and then they're making good decisions together. So I think that's the similarity that I see with 2008, that you have people that need someone to advise them.
Cool.
You made some good points there, Bing. So you lived through it.
The baby.
You're only a child.
I was only 9. I think I was 9. I'm 24. It's 2023. Yeah, I was 9 years old, so I was in 4th grade. And I remember it wasn't that bad, honestly. Like, for us, it wasn't really that bad. We took an income hit.
Yeah. Well, remember, the short sales didn't affect everybody.
No, but the general things were inflated. We were cutting coupons for a little bit. You had to cut back on costs because my dad was in financial services. So he was doing investments and he was selling life insurance, and everyone was pulling out of the market because they thought it was going to be 1929 again.
Right.
So, we went from, I think, $200,000 a year to 90. Yeah. So it was a big cut. We were good still, but it was, you had to be a little more mindful. Other people I knew, people got divorced, people short sailed, people got fired or laid off. It affected everyone very differently. So it's always interesting to hear other people's, especially in your industry, and hear other people's thought processes on how they experienced that time. And it wasn't like 1929 at all. A lot of people liken it to the Great Depression when it really wasn't. It was a 2-3 year shortfall, and then everything bounced back. And 2012 was like when everything was kind of back to normal and people were hanging out and chilling again. Of course, that was when the millennials were like, we're never going to afford a house. And then fast forward to 2020 and millennials are buying houses.
For more money than we ever thought they would be paying.
That is true. Now, that's another episode in and of itself. But
how much is too much?
How much is, well, I would say if it's like, it's one thing if costs, if income is matching the cost of living. It's another thing if income is the same and the cost of living is up here. Then that if it's like this, it's too much. But if it's relatively in the same ballpark, it's fair. Of course, I don't really know. I'm not in a position to move out, so I kind of turn my brain off, and I only listen to prices when I talk to you. So if that's any indication.
True. So, I actually, and you might have noticed, my mood changes when I speak about 2008.
Very somber.
Yeah, it does. It was nice.
It was nice to reminisce.
I hate to just make it all about, I had great sales, but I had a great sales team. I still do.
Well, what about the agents? What about the agents that didn't do so well? Like, what was their struggles like? What were struggles? Well, what was their real estate experience like?
Let's see. I guess I have to think back to agents that were in the industry and were no longer in the industry in those years, right? So let's see. Those would be the agents that I would have always equated that they didn't go to the trouble to learn the industry. Okay. They didn't go to the trouble to learn, to really learn the process. It wasn't about an open house. It wasn't about putting a sign in the front lawn. It's always been about speaking to your client, assisting your client, helping your client make their good decision, and navigating through that decision. Just because you make a good decision doesn't mean it's an easy breezy, like, let's go, I can name my easy transactions. I'd have a hard time telling you all about the ones that needed a little more navigating, a little more finesse, a little more being in the driver's seat. So I think that the agents that, felt like the industry is all about just showing houses and collecting a check, those agents weren't in the business anymore.
I see. So it's the same rules that apply to today.
Absolutely. I think it's the same rules that apply to any field, and it's the same rules that apply whether we're in a upswing market of a seller's market or of a downturn market or a buyer's market. It's the same rules. It's the agents that know what they're doing will always know what they're doing, and they can navigate.
So one last question, I guess, before we wrap it up. How many active licenses are there on Long Island now, and did they recover or exceed the pre-2008 era?
See what I mean about you asking me a question that I should have had the answer for? Actually, we probably have exceeded the number of licensees from 2007 peak time. I can give you an estimate. It's probably about 50,000 licenses in some way on Long Island. I can also give you another example. They're not the same licenses that were in the industry in 2008. This industry has an attrition rate of 70%. So 70% of all new licensees usually leave the business within the first year. So there's always been a very high rate of attrition in this industry. I also know of another statistic from the beginning of the year. I believe 60,000 agents nationwide have left the industry. That statistic I heard way back in March or April, so I don't know if it's any higher. But the attrition rate has always been there. I think that we probably still have a decent amount of licenses right now at this moment because we're constantly getting new licensees. But the 70% attrition rate, makes for a constant norm. What I can tell you is the average age of a realtor, I believe, has only gone down by a couple years since 2005.
Wow.
It's always been something around 62 years old, I feel. I'm going to have to double check my statistics. Maybe that's a podcast. Stats and more stats.
Stats and more stats.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That might even be interesting.
I think it would be too. You know what's cool is that a lot of, I feel like 2008 made everyone financially conscious. Like, at least in my generation, like, we were more concerned, probably because a lot of my generation I'm an only child, but everyone else has a brother and sister. So maybe when they were hearing their brothers and sisters freaking out about college and graduating in a recession, my generation was like, well, we should focus on not being poor and just finding out. Like, a lot of people my age are into investments, Robinhood, TD Ameritrade. Like, everyone has a stock or has invested. If they're in their 20s, or they're at least conscious about starting a business or having an LLC, or just like doing something to try to get financially literate.
Yeah.
And-
Now I have a question. Because I believe that education has changed, and in the education system, have they begun teaching more fiscal responsibility
No.
for finances?
Nope, not at all. It's
I would say
literally-
that should happen.
I agree with you, and we were saying that too when we were kids. But what it's coming from is our parents. At least for me, it's been my dad. But for other people, it's YouTube videos, podcasts. What their friends have been doing. It went from the kids that were interested in selling drugs in high school or candy and chips in middle school. They were like, oh, wait a minute, stocks, that's cool. Or, oh, wait a minute, there's other ways
That
to make money.
entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. One man's drug dealer.
One man's a drug dealer, one man's selling gum in high school, another guy's starting a bit. I knew kids, they started lawn care businesses in high school.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
It's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make money, and I think people in my generation were more like, well, it's expensive out here, and I think the effects of 2008 kind of pushed millennials and Gen Z to focus on how do we make money? What is this entrepreneur? Like, how do I survive? And people rely on the defaults where it's just like, okay, well, we'll be the good old American boy and just, do whatever, or we'll be hood and we'll sell drugs. And then it was like, well, both of these don't work. Both of these aren't sustainable. And then as we aged, it was like, oh, LLC. Oh, learn something at a job and then make it your own business.
Yeah. I've also noticed a lot more younger people entering real estate.
Yes.
I don't know what the official statistic will be as to how many of those younger people will stay in real estate. So that'll be interesting. I think that's definitely over the course
I
of the
think
next
the
5 or
average
10 years.
age of this office is 20.
No, that's the average age. It cannot be the average age because we have one 19-year-old. So obviously,
I don't do math, dude.
yeah, no, it's
There's a lot of young people here.
yeah. The average age of recruits seems to be a lot closer to 26 than 46. So that definitely is a change over the course of a decade. But I noticed that. I think it's really great. But I think it'll all depend. It's when you recruit a 46-year-old, they're in it for the long haul. And I'm not sure sometimes if a 22-year-old feels the same way. Although a lot of my recruits are people that are saying, no, real estate, that's definitely what I want to do. So I'm looking forward to it. If we have to, I'd love to make the average age of a realtor
20.
No, 20 is impossible. But I think that if we made an adjustment from the average age being 62 to the average age being 52, it'd be a different landscape out there. You'd see the younger people having longevity. You see the younger people excelling, the younger people staying in the business past 1 year, the younger people not making too many moves, maybe a little more conservative on their part when it comes to brokerages, when it comes to being in it for the marathon, not the sprint. So we'll see. I'll be here.
And I'll be filming still.
I've only been around for 200 years. I can be around for 200 more. So, all right, Bing. And this is our podcast. And what was the title of this one?
This one was...
Oh, you titled it.
The idea is 2008. I'll come up with a snappy title later.
I call it Back in Time.
Back in Time. Okay.
We're going back in time. That's a theme song from Back to the Future Part 2, I believe.
Back in Time. All right. Where can the folks find you?
They can find me on Cloud9.
Shit.
They can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify. The Real Ted G Podcast.